everyone. I am so glad you're joining me here in the Happy Place to Grow once again, where recently we've been doing all things Eric Carle. We've read some really great stories so far. I thought it would be really fun today for us to take on a little adventure. Yeah, it's still Eric Carle, but instead of reading a story, we're going to dive into some art, Eric Carle style. You know, he loved to use a technique called collage after he did some painting on some very thin paper, tissue paper. I thought it would be fun to explore this really interesting, unique, and colorful technique that, you know, when I'm reading an Eric Carle story, I'm really liking the story and the words, but I'm very interested in the colorful illustrations. And so I thought it would be fun for us to join together and give it a try. Now, you're going to need some special supplies for this activity, and hopefully we might come out with something just as beautiful. Well, it will be our work, so it will be beautiful because we created it. Here's some things you're going to need for this project. Definitely paint. Now, it's almost back to school time, so I was able to pick up some paint in the school supply aisle. I love this one because it's got 10 different colors. And one of the things that Eric Carle did when he was creating his art was that he was using paint on tissue and he was blending some of the colors. So this offers you those basic colors like yellow and green and blue, but it also gives you purple, pink, and even white for that blending. So paint, definitely. You're going to definitely need some gift tissue. Now this one should be an easy one, because if your family is like me and you get gifts and presents, you always keep the tissue. My family knows that when we're doing a gift giving, that anytime they open something with tissue, they just hand it over to me and I use it and reuse it. So you'll need some tissue. You're going to need, of course, paintbrushes. However, we do know that Eric Carle did love also to use other objects to create textures. I found this, sometimes I use it as my pointer for things. But this rake front, the top of this would make a great texture to drag, like it could be grass. Yeah, so look around your house for different things that have a feel on them that when you pull it through paint, it will create a really unique texture. So you'll need some brushes and objects, scissors, and definitely glue. You can use stick glue or white glue. I didn't have any white glue around the house, so I just grabbed my stick glue. And the final thing you're going to need is just some paper, because the technique of collage is going to require you to paint on this tissue. Well, Eric Carle style collage, he used tissue. For any kind of collage is where you're taking pieces of one thing and cutting them or tearing them and then forming another picture from the pieces of whatever it is that you're working together. So Eric was famous for painting tissue and then tearing it or cutting it and then gluing it or attaching it to another piece of paper to form his beautiful artwork for his books. So you're going to need these supplies. So go and grab those things and then meet me right back here. I've also got my little art apron on because paint can be a little messy. All right, go get those things. I'm waiting right here for you. I can't wait for us to get started. Okay, I know that you are excited about this art assignment, this art project. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have, it's kind of a multi-step. So the first thing I did a lot of it in advance for you so that you could get the whole art technique from this one session. So what I did was I went ahead and I pre-painted some tissue, and I'm really glad that I did, because I got to thinking about it. Paint is wet and it has to dry before you can cut it. So I went ahead and painted several different colors. Well, let me back up. Let me rewind it. The first thing I did was think. I thought about, I used my imagination, and I thought, what is a picture that I would love to piece together with different colored tissue paper? Kind of like this bright sun in the background where you can see he's used some oranges and yellows, some textures, and then cut out the beams that go with the sun, and then kind of layered. You can see the texture right there. It looks like maybe he pulled some carpet across there. He's got sometimes the sky will be pink when the sun is setting, and then the sky will be dark. So he's layered. So I had to think, what do I want to create, and what is it I think that I can create for my first time doing this unique art technique? So I went ahead and pre-painted. I thought about flower and of course this beautiful sun. I was inspired by that. So I thought, I've got a picture in my mind first of what I wanted to create, and then I painted. And I'm going to do some painting in just a minute for you, just to show you that technique. So I painted, and then I let my tissue dry. And it dried. It took, I waited at least a day for it to dry. And then I started cutting my pieces out and placing them together. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So let's practice this technique, because as I was doing it, I realized this tissue is very delicate. Do you know what delicate means? It means that it is very light and it can get damaged easy. So you have to be gentle with your treatment. And I'm really glad that I was able to work with it a little bit before working with it on camera with you, because I got used to the feel. I did rip some of my paper as I was painting. It got so moist that it just kind of, the paper kind of ripped open. But I thought, you know, that's okay, because we're going to be cutting it and tearing it. It really made me appreciate the hard work that Eric did. It's not as easy as it looks. You think, oh, you're just going to go paint, blend the colors, cut them out. It's not that easy. He definitely had skill, talent, creativity, lots of imagination, and I'm sure that he worked really hard. He probably messed up a lot of his art pieces and had to start over. So I'm sure he painted a lot of the same color just in case he made a mistake. And you know, everyone does, even great artists like Eric Carle. So that was one thing I learned as I was practicing. And the other thing I was curious about, once I did it, I was like, well, why would he use tissue? It's so delicate. Why not just use paper? It's thicker. It would be more durable. And my research, when I was reading up on this art technique, I found out that he did start off with paper. And as he was painting, over time, he realized that the color of his art, his paint, would fade. It would lose its brightness, its vibrance, and it would fade over time and get less colorful. I guess he was working with some different paper, and then he found out that tissue was the paper that kept the color bright and vibrant the longest. And so he stuck with it. All right, let me just show you a little bit of the brush technique. I'm just going to do a quick model for you, and then I'm going to show you what I've already created in advance. But I wanted you to get the feel. So I've got this clipboard, I've got some tissue. You know, I even found out that you could, some of my tissue, because if you're painting, it's going to, on tissue, it's going to kind of bleed through or go through because it's wet and moist. So you might want to even double the tissue up, which with some of mine I did. So decide what you want to paint. If you want to do sky or grass or the flower colors. I'm just going to get the green, and I'm going to show you I just put my brush inside of the little container of paint, but you could pour this in little dishes, little paper plates, however, whatever works for you and making it easier. I'm just going to dip in, and I have different size brushes, and I found, I'm going to give you a little help here. I found the bigger brushes were easier because it made the time of painting a little bit shorter. So I just dipped in my container, and you want, paint is drippy and wet. If you want a lot of color, if you want your color to be darker, you might have to paint and then let it dry and then paint again. So you're just going to brush. Isn't that pretty already? And brush and brush. And then you might dip again. And if you're blending your colors, you would get a different, if you wanted to have, see how delicate that is. And then if you wanted to put some texture or some different strokes in there, you could do that. You might have to wait till it dries and then come back. You might want to go criss and cross, and that is kind of crunching, and I think that's cool too. It doesn't matter if it looks like anything. I just painted big splotches because I knew I was going to rip and tear this and cut it to form. So that's cool too. You don't have to already pre-shape your things. You just paint. If you wanted to come back and just say you wanted to make you were making your green, but you wanted it to be light green. So you wanted to take some white and lighten that up. You could get your white paint. Get a different brush though. Don't mix your colors, and get your white inside your green. Go ahead and get a different. That's why I have multiple brushes here. You want to paint too somewhere that you're not going to make a mess on your carpet, or you might want to lay down some different pieces of old paper, some newspaper, magazine paper. So if you're blending some lighter colors in there, and then I'm not going to put this back in my white, I'm going to lay it down. That's why I have multiple. I discovered this as I was painting, and I'm giving you these tips so you already know what to do. Multiple paintbrushes, because I didn't want to keep putting it in my, if I was mixing or blending. And then it might be okay if I just let that dry now. So I've got some white in there. And I just want to see I just want to try this. Should I try this? Let's see what happens if, I'm going to be gentle though. Can't really see it though, can you? I guess if I let me put another big splotch of green, because I want to try that rake texture. And you might think, oh, I'm going to use this or that. And then you might find out, oh, that didn't work. So arts, sometimes, a lot of things that we're doing, let me just put a really dark layer here. Sometimes things that we're doing, we're guessing and we're testing. It's almost like science in a way with art. You're trying out techniques, you're trying out things, and then some things work, and you might have to go back to the drawing. There we go. I love it. That would be great for grass. Cool. So we're guessing and we're testing and we're trying out techniques. We might have to try something and then try something else. That's what makes art so fun, because you're exploring, you're kind of going on an adventure in your own house. So this is the painting technique. So that's really step one. And you have to let that dry. So find a safe place in your house that nobody's going to be walking. Let it dry, probably overnight. And then comes your design. Remember, you've already thought about what you want to make. So I went ahead and painted lots of colors. For my design, I painted green. I really wish that I had thought about that rake before I painted, because that would have been great. Grass. I painted some orange. I painted some blue, and then I mixed some blue and white. What do you think I'm going to create? I've got pink, orange, green, blue, and light blue. What do you think? I'm definitely going to be painting the sky. Did you see that clue back there? Grass. I got inspired here. If you can see this up close, you can see there's a wiggle. That's where Eric would use the back of the brush and just kind of squiggle through that wet paint. That's fun. I really like this technique. And then I love the sunshine in his books. Sometimes he'll put a face on it. I didn't put a face on mine, but I might go back and do that. All right, here's what I've already started. Remember, you're going to need, for this part, you're going to need paper. And this is where your scissors and your glue come in, but you don't necessarily need scissors. You can rip and tear your paper. This is what I've already worked on. There's my sunshine, and I've got the blue sky in. And what I did was, the first thing I started, this is kind of a layered piece. So I laid my blue tissue across, and then I measured and cut. The extra, I just cut off. You know, I thought about it though after a while. I could have just let it could have hung over. It would have been fine. And then after I got the blue, I layered this sun. I kind of had to sculpture it and curve it. And then I just started cutting out little rays of sunshine like Eric. Now, Eric's are more rectangular. I did mine more with a little point. And I didn't have any technique. I just took my tissue and I just kind of cut in a fashion that would be a long ray, if you please. Kind of like that. Different sizes. You can even take your tissue and kind of pull on it, and it will curl a little bit. And then I just tucked that up under my sunshine. See how I just kind of tucked it up under and then glued those pieces. So this is my collage is taking form. And I pieced together, when I didn't have enough blue over here, I added a little bit more in my collage, piecing together different medium, different papers, different things to form a new picture. So cutting or ripping pieces of paper or cloth and then creating something new. Collage. It's fun. It's interesting. Definitely creative. And then I had the light blue because I was thinking how clouds are sort of wispy in the sky. So I went ahead and I layered down here just clouds. I could have put them up there. I saved one because I'm going to show you I'm going to glue it right there on my piece. So it'll be right, just kind of clouds floating in this above. And just put the glue. I really like white glue, but like I said, I didn't have any available. And so I'm just going to put the glue on the back here. I think white glue would work better, although it will get the tissue a little bit wet. So you'll have to be using it not as thick. So I'm just going to layer it. Again, when you're collaging and you're layering, It doesn't have to fit perfectly. You could have some peekaboo see-through. You know, clouds might be floating and some of the sun might be peeking through. And then I just did a grass layer. I had painted sideways. I got inspired by the story Brown Bear, where Eric had painted the teacher's face. Some of the teacher's clothes were the paint was sideways, and some was going horizontal, some was going vertical. So I went this way, and I let this dry, and then I painted over it again and coated it twice. Yeah. So I just layered and layered. And then with my grass, here's my leftover. What I did was cut a long section. Again, I measured the paper because I wanted it to be the same length. And see, here's where it's fun. Even though I didn't paint all the way to the edge, I can just cut that off. It doesn't even matter. I love it. It's kind of like no mistake art, right? And then I just kind of did this little fringe. If you snip down, and then as you're going across making those little blades of grass, you're just nipping down. It's fun. And then you can, if you want to make, you have to be careful with this with tissue, but you can kind of take your, sometimes you can take a pencil back there or your fingers and just kind of, you can even crunch it a little so it's not perfectly, you know, grass is blowing and it's moving and sometimes people step on it. So you can kind of make your grass not so straight. Some of the pieces, just crunch them down. I love it. And then I just glued that on in 2 layers. There was that bottom layer and then there was the top layer. If I wanted to, my sun could be all the way down here, or my sky, I could have had some more dark sky there. And if I wanted to too, I could go back with even my crayons. I know Eric Carle sometimes did add details with crayons and with different colors. He added in eyes and different things using crayons, probably some markers too. And then I took little strips. Again, this doesn't even have to be, I didn't measure it out. I just was thinking about the thickness of a stem. And then I cut a stem. And then I just tucked it up under the grass. And if it was too tall, see, I just tucked that in under that grass. If it was too tall, I just snipped off the extra. I could even add some more flowers here to have a field of flowers. That would be really pretty. Then I'll show you how I shaped my flowers. I was thinking about, I'm going to go ahead and glue that in because I'm going to add another flower. I'll probably add some more here too to fill up that space so there's less white. What do you think? Yeah, good idea. So this one is a little tulip. And if you wanted to, of course, you could have some different, this was the paper I used to cut out my flowers. And again, you can see I didn't paint the whole thing. That's what I love about this technique. So with my tulip, I'm going to just get a little square here. You know, a tulip is kind of like a bowl shape, and then it's got little triangles. So that one was easy for me to do. So I just kind of cut and then went up and down and up and down. And it was really, my first one was really big. So I went ahead and just trimmed it up after I put it on the page. I'm going to show you it, this one. It looked really big. And I thought, I'm gonna make that just a little bit smaller. So I trimmed it up, sort of made it just a little smaller like I'm gonna do with this one. And again, it's just a work of art. I'm gonna go ahead and glue that on, and I love it. See if I can, you know, art can kind of get messy. I lost in this collage paper, I lost my glue stick, but I found it. Can you imagine Eric Carle's art studio? It was probably a hot mess, but he loved it and had fun. I just snuck that one in. And then this one, I just made a, I'm going to cut another little square just so I have less paper to work with. I just kind of went around in a, like a, like a little flowery shape. Rounded and kind of like a little cloud shape sort of for a different type of flower. And I would think, oh, that's too big. I'm going to cut it down. But it could be that big if I needed it to. Let's kind of cut it down. There's all different kinds of flowers in a field. You might find tulips. You might find daffodils. So again, you don't have to stay with all pink. You could do pink, purple, yellow, you know, just have fun. And then I took a little piece of green tissue and just balled it up. So you could just take a little piece of green like this and just rip it and then ball it up. And I glued it in the middle of the flower. Cute. And then this last one, I was trying to do like petals. So I actually had to do each petal individually. And then again, I just balled up a little piece of green paper. And, well, it's not like Eric's totally, but it's definitely inspired by that collage technique. And, you know, it's my creation. So I'm really happy with it. And I feel like over time, if I practiced this, thought about some different designs, maybe even reworked some things that I did with this one and tried it again, I would get even better over time. I love this, and I could keep on working and doing more. It would definitely take some work to create people's faces, don't you think, like Eric did, and animals. How did he do that? Well, he was an artist, and he was definitely good at what he did. That was his first and best skill. And then he worked in his authoring, his writing skill too. He put authoring, writing, and beautiful artwork together. And we have some wonderful and great Eric Carle stories that we're going to keep on enjoying. Well, I want you to work on your special Eric Carle arts at home. Try this with your family members. Again, it's going to take you've got to go get the supplies. You'll have to paint the tissue, let it dry. Imagine, you can even draw out what you want. And I would keep it simple at first. Sunshine, the sky, some grass, some flowers, a tree, and then maybe move into some different kinds of animals. I think a turtle might be fun to make. That might be what I do next, because just creating the shell, because it's like an oval. I could do that and stick out some little legs, form a head. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for a turtle next. Wish me some luck. I'm going to need it. All right, kids and family members, I hope you have enjoyed joining me for this very special time of Eric Carle's wonderful world of art. And keep on creating and keep on enjoying using your imagination and putting it into something new, like an art creation. All right, until our next story time together, we'll be back to read some more Eric Carle books. I can't wait for our next reading adventure. And as always, keep on having fun this summer. Pick up some paint and some brushes and get creative. And I'll see you real soon.